One Punch Man is by far one of the greatest and most unique battle manga I have read in my 5 or so years of reading manga, and the Monster Association is an arc that has surpassed my expectations in terms of length and how much action and number of fights that have taken place in the said arc. Not to mention the beautiful art by Yusuke Murata and great dialogue implemented in the fights by the author One only elevate the fights further. And as a One Punch Man enthusiast, I have taken on the challenge of going over every single fight in the Monster Association saga, and of course this video took me a lot of time and effort to make and to script and edit and all the other things, so I would really appreciate if you left a like and watched until the end to help the video out. But without further ado, let's go over every single fight that has taken place in the Monster Association saga. This fight starts off with Garo and Tario in a hideout, and whilst Garo is recovering from his injuries from his prior fight, and after speaking to Tario for a while, Garo senses that they are being surrounded and checks to see who it is, and identifies each of the heroes, who are Glasses, Chain and Toad, Stinger, Smile Man, Death Gatling, Gun, Shooter, and Wildhorn. After realizing what is about to happen, Garo jumps out of the hideout to confront these heroes. Death Gatling proceeds to tell Garo that they are here to defeat him and take him back to the Hero Association, whilst also expressing his distaste for the S-Class heroes and their special treatment. The fight is kicked off by Gun as he shoots a bullet at Garo. However, Garo is able to narrowly dodge. Stinger then follows up with an attack that Garo is also forced to dodge. Shooter then shoots a barrage of arrows from above, which Garo dodges as well. Chain and Toad follows up with his own attacks, while Smile Man simultaneously attacks Garo from above, and as Garo dodges, Wildhorn attempts to come in and attack Garo from in front. As Garo tries to attack Wildhorn, Gun manages to hit Garo, and Stinger then follows up and manages to cut Garo. Garo analyzes the battlefield but is not given the chance, as Chain and Toad and Smile Man both attack Garo yet again, and as Garo dodges all of these attacks, they continue to barrage Garo with attacks, and Shooter then comes in with another arrow rain, and Garo realizes that the attacks are dipped in poison, making these arrows even more of a concern. Smile Man, Chain and Toad, and Gun attack all at once, and whilst Shooter uses another arrow rain, and this time 2 arrows manage to hit Garo on his back. Garo then realizes that Glasses is supplying Shooter with the arrows and attempts to go for him. Garo tries to grab Glasses, but he manages to evade and land a blow on Garo's face. Death Gatling then proceeds to advise Garo to surrender and says that he has no chance of beating them all at once. However, Garo does not listen and uses a sort of breathing technique that seems to have allowed him to increase in his physical abilities, because as Chain and Toad attacks Garo with his chains, Garo manages to grab it. Smile Man then uses an attack with his giant ball and hammer. However, Garo manages to redirect it to Chain and Toad, which completely takes him out of the fight. Gun tries to shoot Garo, but Garo uses Smile Man's ball to block the bullets and smash the ball at Gun, which manages to hit him and take him out in a similar way to Chain and Toad. Wildhorn then uses an attack to destroy Smile Man's ball that Garo used to take out the other 2. However, Garo manages to get through the rubble created by the attack from Wildhorn, surprising him in the process. And Garo takes advantage of this and wraps Chain and Toad's chains around his legs, stopping him from moving. And Garo then cleverly uses Wildhorn's steel armor to protect him from Shooter's arrow rain attack. Glasses then throws pebbles at Garo to try and catch him off guard, but Garo catches each of them and throws them at Shooter with great speed, which knocks him out in the process. At this point, Garo had taken out 3 heroes, but had also taken considerable damage. Stinger then goes in to attack Garo, but Wildhorn is used as a barrier. Garo then charges at Stinger, challenging him to a one-on-one fight, knowing Stinger would be dumb enough to actually accept this. Garo, whilst running, shoots his hands into the ground and raises the roots of the tree as a distraction, and uses this opportunity to smash Smileman in the face, taking him out of the fight completely. Death Gatling then makes his first move of the fight and attacks Garo with bullets, but Garo dodges each of them whilst running at Glasses as his next target. Garo then unloads a bunch of punches at Glasses, which he manages to barely block with his arms. Then Glasses, in a last-ditch attempt, tries to attack Garo, but Garo blocks and hits him in the face. But Stinger then intervenes and tries to hit him with a gigantic drill attack, but Garo manages to evade this attack with great skill and dodges Stinger with multiple hits to the face and body, which knocks him out. Glasses then manages to muster up enough strength to try and deal a final blow to Garo, but Garo just whacks him in the stomach and sends him flying into a tree. Death Gatling is the final hero left and uses his final attack, Death Shower, despite knowing a child is still in the hideout directly behind Garo. The bullets unload at crazy speeds, but Garo expertly redirects and intercepts these bullets, leaving only a portion of the hideout behind him, whilst everywhere else around him is decimated by the bullets. Garo then taunts Death Gatling and says that he should have brought a S-class hero and maybe they would have killed him. But Death Gatling refuses and proclaims that he is evidence that A-class heroes matter. But this is all for nothing, as Garo just charges at him and knocks him out with a kick. As Garo thought the fight was over, a new challenger appears. This fight is revealed to only be possible thanks to Glasses' distress call. The fight begins with Genos announcing that he will eliminate Garo, and they exchange fists, and at first it looks evenly matched. However, Genos rushes in and uses machine gun blows, which Garo just manages to redirect with his water stream rock smashing fist. But even with this, Genos still gets a hit in on Garo and clearly inflicts damage onto him. Genos then goes in for a punch that is propelled by his rockets, but Garo, with good reaction speed, blocks by lifting his entire leg, which surprises Genos. Garo then counterattacks by throwing a kick at Genos' head, which manages to cleanly land. Genos, despite being struck down, fires a huge energy blast towards Garo, but Garo, by the skin of his teeth, dodges. Genos then springs up and says that Garo is a much more formidable opponent than he anticipated. But on the other hand, Garo is observing Genos and realizes that he cannot win this fight because Genos is just too strong, not to mention the injuries he has sustained from his previous battle. But Garo, by utilizing his expert adaptability, manages to imagine the movements of the S-class hero Watchdog Man and proceeds to mimic his movements. As Genos realizes this, Garo, with his crazy speed, gets behind him, grabs his arm and pulls it off completely. However, little did Garo know that Genos still had control of the arm, despite it being pulled off. Genos' arm grabs Garo by the neck and shoots a blast to propel it towards a tree and pins Garo in place. Genos, without wasting any time, proceeds to blast a beam at Garo, who is currently incapacitated. Garo then taunts Genos whilst using the strength of his legs to break the tree behind him to avoid being hit by Genos' beams. As Garo recovers from this, he rubs all the blood on him into his hair and eye, which changes his appearance, as one of his eyes and entire hair are now red. After this, a bunch of monsters emerge from the ground and attack Genos in an attempt to protect Garo, but Garo is not able to escape as a pair of heroes join the fight. Bang comes in flying with a kick to Garo's face that sends him back. Garo attempts to stand up but is trembling due to the damage he has taken from his previous fights, but manages to muster enough strength to face Bang and charge at him. But Bang easily counters by blasting multiple hits onto Garo, leaving dents of his fist on him as they connect onto his body. Bang continues to beat the crap out of Garo, but Garo manages to use the water string rock smashing fist to evenly collide with Bang for a brief moment. However, it is clear that Bang's attacks and techniques are much better than an injured Garo, and Bang grabs Garo by his hands and slams him down to the ground, breaking it in the process. Garo attempts to reach for a knocked out Death Gatling to use as a hostage, but Bomb intercepts and kicks Garo in the jaw. Garo continues to be overwhelmed overwhelmed as Bomb now joins the fight and beats Garo down along with Bang. Bang and Bomb both go in for a decisive blow, but Garo, with his last remaining strength, roars and quickly ducks to evade their attacks. Phoenix Man then appears to quickly snatch and rescue Garo from being taken out. And after doing this, he calls upon one of the strongest dragon level monsters to grace the One Punch Man verse, Elder Centipede. This large-scale fight begins with Elder Centipede emerging from underground from Phoenix Man's call, and it is revealed that Elder Centipede is a dragon-level threat. Genos, Bang and Bomb assume their formations and the fight begins. Elder Centipede charges at Bang and Bomb, and they both get ready to use one of the most impressive combo abilities in the series, which is the Roaring Aura Sky Ripping Fist, and as this connects, it sends shockwaves through the entire body of Elder Centipede, but it does not do enough to take it down as it simply molts and regenerates. Genos then jumps up and flies towards Elder Centipede and shoots multiple blasts at it, but it is clear that he is not doing much damage at all. Genos then continues to fight harder and propels down onto Elder Centipede's face and wound it with his blades. However, despite doing some damage, Elder Centipede manages to recover and slice Genos in half, separating him from his torso and eating him. As EC tells Genos to melt, Genos inside of EC's stomach manages to survive and says, "No, you will be the one to melt," as he uses the Ultra Spiral Incineration Cannon, which manages to completely burn Elder Centipede from the inside, but it manages to regenerate and seems to be unharmed. EC then spits Genos back out, and Genos, defeated on the floor, continues to lament about how much of a failure he is. Bang then gets ready to face EC, but someone out of nowhere intervenes. Continuing from the last fight, we see that King has arrived on the battlefield with a megaphone calling out EC's name and grabs his attention by saying, "Blast is here," and Elder Centipede, hearing this, goes crazy and charges towards King. And as EC gets closer, King shouts Saitama's name, and Saitama appears and uses a serious punch and completely disintegrates Elder Centipede, turning it into no more than dust and ash. This peculiar fight begins with Saitama calling Garo out for not paying after dining and dashing from the restaurant they so happen to both be eating at. Garo realizes Saitama is actually a hero and begins to approach him. As Garo gets closer, he tells Saitama that he is going to kill him, but he is cut off as Saitama awkwardly and nonchalantly punches him away in a comedic manner, as Saitama has also realized that he has eaten without paying by accident. Following the brief and interesting encounter with Saitama, Garo, after recovering from Saitama's punch, wonders what just happened to him and begins to talk to Tario. However, as a voice calls out from the darkness, asking what Garo is doing, it is revealed that Royal Ripper and Bug God had been observing Garo after being ordered by Garo to watch over him, and they had concluded that Garo did not act like a monster and that he was not like they were. Garo then assumes a fighting stance and tells Tario to stand back. Royal Ripper begins to threaten to kill Tario, which causes Garo to shout at Tario to run. However, Royal Ripper makes the first move and lunges at Tario, but Garo manages to use his technique to stop the blade and kick Royal Ripper in the stomach, sending him upwards. Royal Ripper manages to recover and seems to not have taken too much damage. Garo then realizes that these two may be a little more troublesome than he anticipated and gets into a stance that suggests he's starting to get serious. Garo then goes in for a hit on Bug God, but Bug God tanks the blow and goes in for a flurry of attacks on Garo, but Garo counterattacks and hits Bug God back. Due to his tough body, he tanks it once again and smashes from above to hit Garo. Garo manages to block this attack, but he gets sent flying back and collides with some wires and gets shocked in the process. However, Garo recovers and all three of them jump at each other and collide. Garo then in his head realizes that he can beat these guys, but in the following panel we see that Tario had been captured by sludge jellyfish that happened to be following Garo as well. Garo in a fit of rage screams at him to let Tario go since he has nothing to do with this, but Royal Ripper uses this as an underhanded and scummy opportunity to slice Garo in the back. Bug God then follows up with a blow to Garo's stomach, and Royal Ripper then continues to brutally stab and slice Garo whilst he was on the ground. And from there it seemed like the fight had been concluded as Bug God and Royal Ripper leave. However, little did they know that leaving Garo to bleed out and die would be a fatal mistake for both of them. After capturing Tario whilst Garo was down, Royal Ripper takes him back to the Monster Association to be tortured and killed. And as Tario is crying, he suddenly yells out for help, and after recovering from a near-death experience and sneaking into the hideout, Garo smashes the wall down and the fight between Royal Ripper and a new and improved Garo had begun. Royal Ripper goes in to slice Garo, but he catches his sword and breaks it in half. And quicker than Royal Ripper could even react, Garo completely destroys Royal Ripper's face with a fist he shaped to look like a claw. And this attack was so powerful, it sends Royal Ripper's head flying and cutting up his entire body into pieces simultaneously. Garo had finally won. After a brief encounter with some lower level monsters in the Monster Association, Garo had awakened the dragon level monster, Overgrown Rover. Garo senses the overwhelming power of the monster and realizes just how outclassed he is and attempts to slowly walk away, as Rover had not completely sensed of their presence just yet. However, to Garo's surprise, Rover suddenly charges up an energy beam from his mouth and fires it directly at him and Tario. Garo manages to run and use the destroyed ceilings and walls to cut through and survive. Garo then shouts at Tario to get away as he is only going to slow him down even more. Garo then proceeds to attack Rover's legs to direct his attention to him. Rover then charges a huge beam at point blank range downwards towards Garo and fires it quicker than Garo could even dodge. The impact of the attack causes the floors to break through and send Garo further down the Monster Association. However, surprisingly, Garo manages to barely survive this attack. Rover then follows up by blasting a barrage of beams towards Garo, in which he responds by going at Rover head on. This causes a huge amount of collateral damage and destroys the surroundings as well. Garo once again manages to survive this onslaught of attacks and jumps in the air to unleash his first strike onto Rover whilst telling it to sit down. Garo's attack was let off with great speed and power, but Rover brushes this off easily, establishing Rover as an insanely durable monster. Rover then unleashes yet another beam that sends Garo further down the Monster Association, which concludes the battle. After having a conversation with Yorogoro about limiters and monsterification, Orochi from underneath the pillar Garo was standing on grabs him, which signals the beginning of this insane fight. Orochi emerges from underneath and reveals himself whilst holding Garo in his hands and dropping him. Garo quickly recovers from the fall. However, Orochi does not give Garo time to recover and immediately sends one of his tentacles towards Garo that pierces right through his chest. But thanks to Garo's growing even further from his fight against Rover and his insane durability, he survives this and manages to block and redirect the rest of the tentacles that Orochi had sent his way. Garo then jumps to a platform higher up in the chamber and runs across it, whilst outrunning Orochi's tentacles that he had sent Garo's way. Garo then decides to go on the offensive and jump off the platform towards Orochi's head in an attempt to attack him, but much to Garo's surprise, Orochi opens up his head, revealing his many mouths layered with fangs. Garo manages to evade this and jump to the floor, revealing just how huge and devastating this new form of Orochi is in comparison to himself. Orochi then unleashes huge amounts of fire from each of his dragon heads, in which Garo manages to resist. Orochi then follows up with a punch towards Garo, which is stopped in its tracks as Garo had blocked it but is not strong enough to completely withstand it and gets sent flying into the wall. As Garo stands up from this attack, he smiles and says, "Don't make me laugh," and continues to comment on how Orochi is not scary enough and does not instill enough fear. Garo then takes a stance that suggests that he is getting serious with the water string rock smashing fist, but much to Garo's surprise, Orochi copies this stance and says he will make Garo feel fear. Garo then quickly jumps up and charges towards Orochi, claiming that Orochi will regret this, and Garo is just completely gets sent flying into the wall from Orochi's attack, knocking him out in the process. Garo had lost this fight. As Second Gar and a bunch of other heroes along with the S-Class head towards the Monster Association's hideout, they are stopped on the street by a bunch of monsters sent by Garo. But one monster in particular raises his hand and lifts up 2 apartment buildings and sends them down from above in an attempt to crush the heroes. But Tatsumaki puts up a barrier that blocks the debris from falling onto them. Evil Eye recognizes Tatsumaki and says he will have her and her sister's eyes to increase his power further, but Tatsumaki looks at him, recognizing how inferior he is compared to her, and unsurprisingly Tatsumaki managed to off-screen this mysterious being who showcased the power of a demon level threat and has appeared to have been compressed and completely makes him disintegrate at a wave of her finger. After giving the other A and B class some trouble, Rhino Wrestler makes the first and last mistake of his life by going for the S-Class hero, Atomic Samurai, and without us even seeing him unsheath his blade, Atomic Samurai asks how much he scored on Rhino Wrestler's horn, as it seemed as though Rhino Wrestler could use figures as a way to quantify how strong of an attack he had received, and before Rhino Wrestler knew it, his horn had been sliced in half, and after pitifully crying out to Garo, he says Atomic Samurai's score was 100, whilst completely collapsing as his body had been sliced to pieces. Atomic Samurai quickly follows up by slicing some other lower level monsters and looks towards Flashy Flash, as he had also within an instant taking out multiple monsters as well. Darkshine then jumps in front of Mizuki to protect her from some monsters attacking, and as Mizuki watches out for Darkshine asking if he is okay, he simply runs through these monsters without even hitting them and watches as they explode. Poopy Prisoner is then attacked by a bigger looking monster and easily tanks these blows, and follows up by completely destroying the monster by punching the monster consecutively, leaving marks of blows onto its body. The S-Class had completely dominated these monsters. As Flashy Flash had made his way into the Monster Association by himself and split away from the Second Guard group, he had stumbled across 2 people who had managed to track him, as one of them applauds Flashy for being able to detect them. Flashy Flash wastes no time by going straight for the kill, but Galewind manages to evade this attack, but Flashy goes straight for Hellfire Flame and exchanges blows with him and uses a Wind Blade kick which slightly grazes Hellfire, but he counters by using a Flame Blade kick that Flashy quickly jumps onto the ceiling to avoid, but realizes that there's steel wire and this was placed by Galewind. But Flashy manages to dodge and goes towards the both of them, and in the process of trying to slice the 2 monsters, Flashy slices the walls of the corridor, which surprises Galewind. Flashy then realizes that they are from the ninja village and they had joined the monsters just to get rid of him, and Galewind then responds by flipping the rock that they were standing on that reveals a massive ravine with a bridge, and Galewind uses his wires to try and attack Flashy, but Flashy dodges and goes in towards Galewind with his sword, but Galewind blocks with his own sword. Hellfire Flame and Gale Wind then use a Stormblade kick that Flashy quickly avoids this, and as Flashy lands, they quickly go for him, forcing Flashy to go on the defensive, and this continues on as they tell Flashy Flash to die. But Flashy Flash manages to counter and slashes both of them, drawing blood from their faces. Once they both see that Flashy is getting serious, they decide to give up on killing Flashy Flash's ninjas and transform into their monster forms. This transformation increases their speed and power as they disappear in front of Flashy, which surprises him. They then appear on each side of him and attempt to slash him, but Flashy manages to block with a shocked look on his face. Gale Wind then launches Flashy backwards, and Hellfire goes back to follow up whilst Flashy Flash is still being launched, but Flashy blocks and counters, which shocks Hellfire. Flashy then uses a heavy flash slash to hit Hellfire and manages to break his sword. Gale Wind and Hellfire then have to fight without using their swords and truly have to fight as fully fledged monsters. Gale Wind and Hellfire then state that they are the only ones that can keep up and rival Flashy Flash's speed. But Flashy Flash scoffs and they all three jump up and break through onto the bridge, and they all go in and exchange blows and bounce around the ravine. But Gale Wind and Hellfire try to overwhelm Flashy, but Flashy responds with a Flashy kick which pressures them both and causes them to panic. And finally, Flashy Flash goes in with his killer move, Flashy Slash, and slices both of them at once, ending the battle and crowning Flashy Flash as the winner of this deadly battle. After defeating some lower level monsters whilst escorting Wanpanman with his small octopus-like gadgets, Phoenix Man has been revealed to have destroyed his toy, as Phoenix Man describes it, and continues to mock Chowder Emperor, but Chowder Emperor wastes no time and asks him straight if he's one of the monster leaders, in which Phoenix Man says he is more of a middle manager and is a demon level threat. Phoenix Man then kicks off the fight by sharpening his beak and shooting straight at Chowder Emperor, but Phoenix Man is stopped by a barrier put up by Chowder Emperor, and Chowder Emperor then follows up by revealing the weapons in his bag and brutally shreds Phoenix Man from the front, which concludes the fight in the first round of this interesting and one of my personal favorites of the fights in the series. Shortly after defeating Phoenix Man, a tall one-eyed robot in a samurai-themed armor reveals himself from a corner and approaches Chowder Emperor, declaring that it will kill him. Chowder Emperor then responds by sending small missile triggered by blowing a flute, and they land on G5 and eject barriers around the robot and sends electric shocks at G5 called the Bug Bazapper by Chowder Emperor. G5, unfazed by this, simply slices them and continues to approach Chowder Emperor and Wanpanman. Chowder Emperor then sends out his underdog men and tells them to combine, in which they are now underdog Cerberus. G5 then carefully unsheathes his blade, and as the underdog machine charges at G5, Chowder Emperor uses his tactical pencil case and sends out bird lime warheads that stick onto G5, stopping his movements, and the Cerberus machine attacks with a wild doggle paddle punch, which gives Chowder Emperor and Wanpanman time to make an escape. After stumbling across the corpse of Phoenix Man, Chowder Emperor remembers of the Phoenix Man's backstory and asks Wanpanman if he knows of the dopey bird and if he was a famous character in the show Animal Kingdom. And Wanpanman tells Chowder Emperor about how Phoenix Man in the show would always die in stupid ways over and over, but would come back in the next episode completely normal, which completely worries Chowder Emperor. And as they were about to leave, a huge beam of light explodes behind them, and in shock, Chowder Emperor and Wanpanman look back to see something emerging out of the light, which was none other than a new and improved Phoenix Man called Phoenix Man Reincarnated, and was revealed to be a dragon level monster. Chowder Emperor then starts the fight by shooting a bird lime shotgun and Phoenix Man, in which he responds by flapping his wings and easily reflecting this attack back, accompanied by a gust of flames. But Phoenix Man ejects a small cone-like barrier to protect him and Wanpanman, and leaves the barrier with Wanpanman still inside as a way to protect him, and concentrates on Phoenix Man and says he will kill him one more time. A barrier is then put up to stop Phoenix Man's flames, but Phoenix Man quickly snaps down his beak to use a beak attack, and thanks to his new power and strength that had been increased by his new reincarnated mode, and manages to break through the barrier and forces Child Emperor to quickly try and block with his bag and get sent flying back. In response to this, Child Emperor begins to cry, but not about how painful the attack was, but instead to the fact that he now has to use his ultimate weapon that he wanted to save, and this said weapon is revealed to be called Brave Giant, as Child Emperor raises his hand in the air, and in a huge explosion, Brave Giant is assembled in all its glory. But Phoenix Man deduces that this weapon probably cannot be used for long since it was not used originally, and this is proven by the fact that this machine can only be used for around 3 minutes. Child Emperor then continues to chase Phoenix Man and use homing missiles at Phoenix Man, which he managed to easily dodge. Child Emperor then goes in to slice Phoenix Man, which he manages to evade as well. Phoenix Man then turns into Fire Falcon mode and is stronger and faster, and Phoenix Man then goes in for a heat up Talon attack and damages Brave Giant. It is then revealed that there's only 1 minute and 38 seconds left for Brave Giant to be used. Child Emperor then sends Little Braves at the monster, but Phoenix Man sends this back at Child Emperor. Child Emperor then goes in for a big attack and uses a super vibrating cutter in an attempt to finish the fight quickly. Phoenix Man manages to barely catch this attack and struggles to resist, but eventually manages to muster enough strength and break the sword, and gets away from Child Emperor and sends an attack at Waganma still inside the barrier. The attack connects and breaks at the barrier, causing cracks on the barrier. However, before the attack could break the barrier, Child Emperor quickly reflects these attacks away back at Phoenix Man, but he dodges all of them. Phoenix Man then tries to hide in the labyrinth, but Child Emperor predicts this and Phoenix Man flies straight into his trap, which triggers an electric shock. And then Child Emperor then goes in with a giant fist strike, and as the fist connects, it is revealed that there is 1 minute and 15 seconds left until Brave Giant shuts down, and the clash between the Child Emperor's attack and Phoenix Man's attempt to stop it causes the point of impact between the two to start to melt. Child Emperor then goes into overdrive and forces Phoenix Man down further into the Monster Association, and it is revealed that they went so far down even under the Monster Association with the Subterraneans. Phoenix Man was incinerated by the attack, but manages to then explode with light once again, and in a desperate attempt to stop this transformation, Child Emperor tries to use his beam graver, but he is stopped by none other than Phoenix Man. But this is no longer Phoenix Man reincarnated. Instead, this is Brilliant Eagle mode Phoenix Man. Phoenix Man then just breaks off the arm of Brave Giant with ease, but Child Emperor does not give up and continues to stare down Phoenix Man and states that he has a plan in mind. But Phoenix Man uses Light of Awakening and the Subterraneans come to life and start to crawl up Brave Giant, and a huge one uses a sword-like weapon to strike down on Brave Giant, but Child Emperor uses a Brave Blade shot to slice the giant in half, but straight after, two figures strike at Brave Giant, and Child Emperor wonders who this could be and questions if it is Flashy Flash, but it is revealed that Phoenix Man revived Galewind and Hellfire Flame as mindless servants. Phoenix Man then flies up to escape and go to the other fights, but the little Braves that Child Emperor sent out earlier come flying down to intercept Phoenix Man, and Child Emperor commands them to combine, and they turn into a giant drill and fire straight at Phoenix Man, but Phoenix Man brushes this off. Child Emperor then attempts to use another attack called Gigavolt Smash that sends him upwards, incinerating and destroying all of the Subterraneans and other monsters that Phoenix Man had revived underneath. Child Emperor then, as he's flying upwards towards Phoenix Man, combines the drill that's sent out and turns it into an arm and uses his final ultimate attack, Millennium Emperor Nova. As the beam approaches Phoenix Man, he states that he will absorb it all, but instead the beam is just too powerful and Phoenix Man is engulfed by the attack and is killed in the process. Phoenix Man, for the second time, had finally lost. As Zombie Man kills some other monsters, a group of monsters surround him, and as they realize he is a zombie, they escort him to fight a monster that they don't like very much. And as Zombie Man enters this room, he is welcomed by the demon level monster Pure Blood as he drops down to face the S-Class hero. Zombie Man opens fire at Pure Blood, which starts the fight. However, Pure Blood dodges and swoops over Zombie Man and bites his neck, and instantly expresses his disgust for the way his blood tastes. And just as Pure Blood thought Zombie Man had died, he begins to rise up, and as Pure Blood talks about himself, Zombie Man wastes no time and opens fire once again, but Pure Blood with insane reflexes simply catches these bullets as he is sent back slightly and flicks the bullets back at Zombie Man, which shoots right through his face. And as Pure Blood thought he had won, he turns away, but Zombie Man, as Zombie Man does, gets up once again, and this time slightly more infuriated, tells Pure Blood to shut up after saying Zombie Man is a sham human. Zombie Man then uses two katana-like weapons to slice at Pure Blood, but he dodges once again. Pure Blood then sharpens the side of his sleeve and swings at Zombie Man, which he manages to block. Zombie Man then swings back at Pure Blood, in which the monster manages to evade and jumps up behind Zombie Man and snaps his neck. Zombie Man, whilst having his neck snapped, loads his gun and shoots a hole right through the stomach of Pure Blood. Pure Blood then uses a nearby monster as a way to regenerate and drinks its blood. Pure Blood then expresses his superiority to Zombie Man, saying he is stronger, and turns his body into a swarm of bats and attacks Zombie Man. But once again, Zombie Man simply regenerates and says Pure Blood that this battle will be one of attrition. The fight then skips to the end, where Pure Blood is nothing more than half ahead, and as he struggles on the floor, Zombie Man says that Pure Blood managed to kill him 200 times, but in the end, the final victory was his. Zombie Man then heads to the door to lock it to kill the rest of the lower level monsters as they scream in pain. After seeing Iron, Okamatachi and Bushido struggle in a tough fight against Do S, a Mime Mask comes in and grabs Do S's whip and joins the battle. Sweet Mask then tells the A-class heroes to go, as they would not be useful in a fight of this nature. Do S then expresses her interest in a Mime Mask, which infuriates him, and as Do S sends Narinki's private squad to attack a Mime Mask simply tenses up and charges right through, defeating them in the process. Do S then tries to whip a Mime Mask once again, but he simply parries this away, and seeing this, Do S surrenders and submits to a Mime Mask, in which a Mime Mask says, "Monsters must die," which concludes the fight, implying that a Mime Mask had supposedly killed Do S. Shortly after her fight against a Mime Mask, Do S realizes that she had managed to survive after Sweet Mask had supposedly finished her off. However, as she brings lower level servants, she stumbles across Fubuki, Bang and Bomb. As they begin the fight, Do S once again expresses her interest in a Mime Mask and wants him to be one of her servants. However, Bang goes in to start the fight and completely takes out all of her servants with ease. Do S is then tied up and they demand to know where Garo is, but she lies and says he's behind a nearby door. Once they enter the room, she blows a whistle claiming that Garo would respond to it. However, it is revealed that it was really a dog whistle for the dragon level cadre who makes a return, Overgrown Rover. Rover then sends huge beams at the three of them, but by using their abilities they redirect the beams away from them. Rover then sends multiple beams once again, which seem to be too much to redirect at once. The beams create a tunnel for the trapped people inside the room to escape through, and as Do S tries to make an escape, she is stopped by Fubuki, and as they both fall, Fubuki uses a hellstorm to send Do S flying down the crater Rover created from his blasts, which concludes this brief battle. After resisting the attacks of some other lower level monsters with his tough body, Puri Puri Prisoner makes his first appearance inside the Monster Association's base. Vakuma then consumes the other monsters that were attacking Puri and shoots a huge beam at Puri that he simply dodges and expresses his disappointment at Vakuma for consuming his comrades. It is then revealed that Vakuma is a demon-level monster that can consume and digest any superpower and use it for himself until he excretes them. Vakuma then sends out another attack that Puri faces head-on and protects himself from, and surprisingly Puri manages to tank this attack and seemingly to have sustained no damage. Puri then begins to tremble and shake due to the electricity and poison that Vakuma had used, but as Puri touches a nearby pillar, it breaks and causes cracks through the entire wall, and Puri names this new power as the Vibration Angel Descended, and follows up with a Dark Angel Rush and completely destroys Vakuma, making his body explode, killing him in the process. Shortly after his fight against Vakuma, Puri is attacked by his smelly lid prison inmates, but realistically sustains no damage due to how weak they are. But from the shadows, a sinister figure approaches and says the monster eyes will never be human again, and slices at Puri's chest, causing damage. It is then revealed that this monster is one of the cadres, Nyan, who is a dragon level monster. Puri then begins to fall but does not give up, saying he must save his boyfriends. The inmates then attack Puri but say that he feels different this time, and it is revealed that Puri had grown a layer of hair that seemed to be healing his wounds from Nyan and acts as a layer of defense against attacks, and names this newfound ability as Angel Bristly Armor. Puri then goes after Nyan, and Nyan remembers this feeling of revulsion from when he was a regular cat and his owner would force his affection onto him, and decides that he does not want to fight Puri since he is a bad matchup, and slips through the cracks in the wall and says he can fit through any space as long as it's 3mm wide. But Puri surpasses our expectations once again and just dives straight into the bedrock and swims through the rock chasing Nyan, showing just how crazy durable he is. And as Nyan comes out from the cracks where the inmates were, he runs away, and shortly after Puri bursts through the wall, crushing the inmates under all of the rock, leaving Puri to cry out and grieve over them, concluding this strange and interesting fight. This fight starts with Bug God unleashing a barrage of punches at Darkshine but does not damage Darkshine in the slightest. Darkshine then expresses his disappointment in Bug God's strength, as he thought that he was the pinnacle of strength as he was told, but instead Darkshine once again states that Bug God had failed to meet his expectations. Bug God then turns into another form that increases his power and claims that he will shred Darkshine to pieces as he charges at the S-Class heroes. And after getting some hits in that did not damage Darkshine in the slightest, Darkshine simply punches Bug God, causing his body to explode on impact, killing him in the process. After killing multiple monsters, Saitama stumbles across Rover once again, who seems to be in quite a lot of fights recently, and as Rover towers over Saitama in classic fashion, he offers Rover a bone, but Saitama is just blasted by Rover, and of course this does nothing to Saitama, and Saitama says, "Blasting me all of a sudden, does that mean you're one of the noisemakers?" and tells Rover to sit, and strikes down on Rover in a similar way to Garo, and causes in essence something similar to a huge explosion that destroys many floors above, below, and even around them, and creates huge tremors through the entire Monster Association base that can be heard by all heroes and monsters. Nyan then looks upon Saitama in fear and states how strong Saitama is, and while Saitama is looking away, he comes out from a crack in the wall above and uses an extreme feline retribution on the back of Saitama's head. And after seeing this did no damage, Nyan begins to panic, and Saitama slowly turns his head in frustration, saying first a dog and now a cat. And before Saitama could do anything, Nyan runs away, luckily with his life still intact. This fight begins with Tatsumaki confronting Garo, and as they exchange their words, Garo kicks off the fight by using her psychokinesis to control multiple rocks in the area and firing it straight at Tatsumaki. As Garo tries to confine Tatsumaki in this ball, she easily breaks out and mocks the monster for performing such a weak attack. But Garo transforms into another form and starts to get serious as multiple eyes now appear all over the monster's body. Garo then uses 300 times gravity on Tatsumaki, sending her flying down and crushing the floor underneath. However, this has no effect on Tatsumaki once again, as she shrugs this off as a shoulder massage. Tatsumaki then performs her first attack of this battle, and by using her psychokinesis, she destroys one of Garo's arms and proceeds to crush the monster's body, causing blood to fly everywhere. Tatsumaki then sees through Garo and figures out that she is just a puppet being controlled by another person. Garo then tries to call for Orochi's help, but there's no answer, as Orochi is facing a threat far greater than what Garo is having to deal with. Tatsumaki then says that she wants to face her real opponent and begins to try and rip it out of the puppet, but Garo tries to use a last attack to take her down, but Tatsumaki obviously is able to withstand this with ease and begins to rip something out of Garo's body. Tatsumaki then realizes that this is one of Fubuki's friends, but the real body is a safe distance away from Tatsumaki in a hideout room where the lady who was controlling Garo is struggling from facing Tatsumaki through her puppet. The woman then drinks something from a small bottle and seems to have powered up, and it is revealed that this person is another Esper named Psychos, who is classed as a dragon level threat. Tatsumaki, using her ability, tries to pull Psychos from underground where she is hiding, but Psychos manages to muster up enough strength to pull her from above and send her downwards towards herself, and as Tatsumaki goes flying down, they both clash and cause an explosion. Psychos then goes in to try and use a laser beam attack from her eyes, but Tatsumaki counters pretty easily and binds her, which stops her movements. Suddenly, a huge explosion goes off in many directions, and it is revealed that this was an explosion from the remnants of Orochi, who seems to have been defeated and is nowhere as powerful as he used to, which allows Psychos to break free, and Psychos heads down to where Orochi is and says she will merge with Orochi, concluding this fight for now. After defeating Rover in one punch and causing a huge explosion from that punch, Saitama finds himself face to face with the king of monsters, Orochi. After seeing what Saitama did to Rover, Orochi is impressed by this and goes in to attack Saitama with his dragon heads, but Saitama easily punches them to pieces and causes Orochi to recoil back in shock. Orochi then realizes this heavy aura from Saitama and deduces that he is the one that got rid of Goketsu and Elder Centipede. Rover then wakes up from his beating and looks at Saitama and instantly runs away in fear, which once again shocks Orochi and makes Orochi interested in Saitama, and says that Saitama is the perfect sacrifice for his resurrection. Orochi then takes off his masks and takes Saitama down further below the Monster Association to an altar surrounded by lava. Once they get down there, Orochi attempts to explain to Saitama, but after a while Saitama takes off his clothes and enters the lava naked, almost like it was a bath, which Orochi once again is in complete shock after seeing and asks himself, who the hell is this guy? Orochi then begins the fight by using his strongest attack and drives his tail down into the earth and says he will pull up energy directly from the core of the earth, and as he does this, he creates earthquakes in other areas and volcanoes to erupt in other countries, which shows just how incredible this attack really is. Orochi then lets off this attack at Saitama called the Gaia Cannon. Saitama then uses a serious water squirt and sends a beam of lava, or water as he calls it, at Orochi. This manages to cancel out Orochi's Gaia Cannon, and Saitama follows up by jumping up and punching straight through Orochi, ending the fight. Orochi, as a small head with tentacles, crawls up the altar to be shown the true altar and sees that he was not meant to be sacrificing anyone, but instead he was to be the sacrifice for another figure shown on the altar. After splitting up with Fubuki and the others, King finds himself walking through the corridors of the Monster Association by himself. Someone calls King's name, and King, of course, in a calm fashion turns around, not scared at all, and realizes that it was just the hostage kid. This so-called hostage kid continues to tell King there's a monster that was just chasing him until he ran into him and asks King to carry him on his back. However, due to King's insane IQ level, he sees through this act and starts to rev up his King engine, and in classic King fashion tells this quote-unquote hostage kid to reveal his true self. And indeed, this was not the hostage kid, but a weak shape-shifting monster hoping to trick King into carrying him to kill him off. After realizing its plans were futile in the face of the almighty King, it starts to panic and melt away, being too scared to even put up a fight in the first place. And that concludes the legendary fight, of course ending in a complete W for our boy King. Atomic Samurai, after splitting from the original group from the surface, comes across G5, who seems to have managed to survive Child Emperor's watchdog Cerberus. G5 then proceeds to approach Atomic Samurai, saying he will slice his neck off. Atomic Samurai wastes no time and goes in to slash the robot, but G5 copies Atomic's moves and continues to do so as they exchange slashes. G5 then increases its speed to overwhelm Atomic Samurai, but Atomic quickly and easily counters, which catches G5 off guard and slices G5 into pieces, causing it to explode. G5 then sends a last-ditch attack towards Atomic Samurai, but the S-Class hero reads it and sends an attack back, but the core of G5 retreats, which concludes this incredibly brief battle. Shortly after beating G5, Atomic Samurai sees a monster chasing after Tario, and it is revealed that this monster is one of the cadres Black S and is a dragon level threat. Atomic Samurai then goes in to slash Black S, but the monster dodges, and this kicks off this deadly fight between Black S and Atomic Samurai. Black S then enlarges part of himself and forms an arm and goes in to punch Atomic Samurai, but Atomic Samurai quickly slices the hulking arm off, but Black S just divides and regains his form again. Black Sperm reveals that even if you crush, slice or hit him, he will only divide even more. Atomic Samurai then proceeds to slice Black S once again, and this time Atomic says he will cut Black S countless times till he can't regenerate further. But Black S still manages to recover and return from his slashes again and again. Atomic Samurai then uses an atomic slash, which once again does not work on Black S, and the numerous Black S's surround Atomic and proceeds to beat him down and completely overwhelm him, but Atomic cuts the floor underneath and falls into a hole that the Black S's follow him into. And as they fall, there's a glimmer of light where Atomic fell, and in a blink of an eye, Black S is evaporated, and other Black S's are already evaporated, as it is revealed that Atomic Samurai is sending concentrated atomic slashes at these Black S that stops them from dividing. But as Atomic goes back up to the surface, a huge Black S is waiting for him and was hiding its main body the entire time, and sends Atomic flying in one hit, and Atomic at this point looks like he's really going to lose, but in a last ditch attempt, Atomic slices the ceiling and makes it fall onto the Black S's, but this was not enough to defeat them, and they grab Atomic by his head and mock him. But luckily enough, Tatsumaki uses her psychokinesis to save Atomic, since luckily enough she is using their tracking devices to pinpoint where each hero is in the Monster Association, and Atomic Samurai manages to escape with his life, barely. We switch our attention to the one and only Zombie Man as he walks through the Monster Association, hearing tremors around him, but suddenly someone appears behind him and starts to blast him from point blank range with energy balls. These blasts completely engulf Zombie Man, which of course causes damage, and it is revealed that this ball blasting man is another cadre in the Monster Association called Homeless Emperor. who is a dragon level threat. Zombie Man quickly regenerates and charges at Homeless Emperor with his axe, but he is blasted in the face. But Zombie Man cleverly manages to slip a bullet through towards the cadre's face, but Homeless Emperor manages to intercept this with his energy ball, which surprises Zombie Man, who is still trying to regenerate from the earlier attack at his face. Once Zombie Man regenerates, he sends bullets towards Homeless Emperor, but once again the energy blasts easily stop his bullets and causes Zombie Man to be caught in the middle of the explosion created. Homeless Emperor then proceeds to talk about his backstory, and this is the first time in One Punch Man that God is mentioned, and by none other than Homeless Emperor, who received his power by this entity. Zombie Man is doubtful about this story and tries to buy time for him to regenerate, but Homeless Emperor takes a stance that implies that he is getting serious and completely destroys Zombie Man to the point that he is barely just a skeleton. But suddenly a green bubble forms around Zombie Man's transmitter and goes upwards, which is obviously Tatsumaki's doing. But Zombie Man regretted not putting the transmitter in his skull, leaving him down there struggling to get up. This was the worst possible matchup for Zombie Man. Our attention is once again switched to My Mask, who just murdered a professor working on monster cells in the Monster Association and proceeds to destroy all the monster cells in the lab whilst holding a random monster's head in his hands. After doing this, My Mask feels a presence creep up on him and flinches towards a mirror, which he just finds no one, and proceeds to admire himself in the mirror. And suddenly, as My Mask is admiring himself, a hulking, ugly looking monster pokes his head around, which causes My Mask to panic and throw the monster head behind him, smashing multiple mirrors as he jumps into a corner in fear. He continues to dread the type of opponent he is facing, and he is then kicked, sending flying through multiple mirrors, and it is revealed that My Mask is facing a cadre who goes by the name Fura Ugly, who is also a dragon level threat. Fura Ugly then taunts Sweet Mask and proceeds to send a barrage of punches at My Mask's face in impressive succession, and My Mask explains the type of monster Fura Ugly is, which is an Ugmon, and these types of monsters turn into monsters essentially due to how ugly they are and the social hardships they had to face as they were human, which turned them into monsters, and they gain strength from how ugly their hearts are. And these types of monsters are clearly a bad matchup for someone like Sweet Mask, but Tatsumaki luckily also saves My Mask, which concludes this fairly brief fight as well. After munching on a few lower level monsters, a huge mouth appears behind our boy Pig God and proceeds to eat him whole, and it is revealed that the culprit is Gums, another cadre who is once again a dragon level threat, but Pig God manages to move around and struggle to the point that Gums has to spit him back out, and without wasting any time, Pig God charges at Gums and these huge figures clash to see who could eat the other. After a while, Pig God does get eaten, but Tatsumaki manages to save him, taking him out of Gums' mouth, which concludes this extremely short fight. After cornering a lower level monster and losing it, Atomic's disciples stumble across the monster once again, who retreated into a room where a tank is kept with 2 eyeballs and some fish inside. And this monster, in hopes of using this monster to defeat these A-class heroes, pushes the tank over, which unleashes this mysterious experiment made by Psychos. But in an instant, the monster is ripped to shreds by mad Dr. Fish, who are deemed as tiger level threats. And as the sentient body of water merges with these fish, they absorb the monster, which changes the viscosity of the water. And the water then follows up by sending the fish towards Iron, but Iron slices the fish in half with ease. But the water then sends a concentrated beam of water towards Iron once again, but this time the water cuts right through the sword, leaving a hole inside of it. And this is when it is revealed that the mysterious body of water is actually a cadre and is a dragon level threat called Evil Natural Water. Puri bursts through a wall once again, utilizing his newfound ability, and comes across someone knocked out and chained up in a confined room. Puri proceeds to make the worst mistake of his life and wakes this figure up, who appears to be the one and only Garo. Garo then proceeds to completely destroy Puri in a succession of strong blows to Puri's body, which causes Puri to drop in pain, stopping him from even being able to stand up, despite having his bristly armor active, which just goes to show how immensely strong Garo has gotten after his fight against Orochi, as he lets out a huge roar in a menacing manner. Puri is then sent flying through the walls once again and is defeated on the floor, which concludes this brief fight. However, a huge foot is stamped on the floor behind Puri, and that will be left for the next fight, which is probably one of the best fights in the series. After messing around and dominating the lower level heroes on the surface, Nian is stopped by Drive Knight, who joins the battle on the surface with Sekengar and the other heroes. And this fight begins with Drive Knight menacingly staring at Nian and transforming into one of his battle transformations, Lance, and flies towards Nian, who calls all these heroes weird and strange, despite being a talking cat. Drive Knight then goes in as a sort of motorbike of some sort and creates a toxic gas smokescreen, but Nian tries to escape through the floor but is stopped by acid put through the floor by Drive Knight. Drive Knight then follows up with multiple missiles towards Nian, which the cadre manages to weave through and gets in close on Drive Knight, but Drive Knight is able to blow Nian in the face, sending him flying in the air with his new battle transformation called Knight. Drive Knight then uses Rook to fly in the air and turns into Bishop to hang over him in the air and punches Nian, which sends him crashing down to the floor. But before Nian could connect fully to the floor, he uses his ability to get into Drive Knight's suit, and he uses Castigation and tries to destroy him from the inside. But Drive Knight switches transformations once again and forces Nian out, but Nian starts to get angry and Drive Knight starts to transform, and they both say that they have decided on their execution methods. And Nian sharpens his claws and Drive Knight transforms into gold as Nian slices at him, causing the buildings in the back to collapse and be destroyed. And Nian then follows up by using another castigation and enters inside Drive Knight's suit and continues to hit him, but just as Nian thought he had won, Drive Knight says, "You fell for it," and as he increases the temperature of his suit to extreme levels and causes Nian to burn to a crisp, and as he tries to escape, Drive Knight finishes him off with silver and stabs him through the chest, which concludes this deadly battle. After seeing Puri beaten on the floor, Darkshine asks who defeated him, and that is when Garo, who at this point has not woken up from his slumber and is moving unconsciously, appears from the broken wall and stares down at Darkshine. Darkshine smiles back and says this will be fun as he approaches Garo to start this crazy fight. Garo kicks off the fight and charges at Darkshine. However, with his insane durable body, Darkshine knocks Garo back and sends him flying. Garo then quickly recovers, and with his insane speed, he spirals around Darkshine and goes in with speedy kicks, in which Darkshine counters by smashing him with his fist, which causes Garo to wake up. Garo wonders where he is and how he ended up here fighting Darkshine, but Garo, being Garo, does not let this faze him and reads the situation and gets ready to continue fighting. Darkshine then goes in to punch Garo, however Garo weaves underneath his huge fist and knocks Darkshine in his side and follows up with a downwards kick with his heel that smashes Darkshine into the floor. However, Darkshine, with no scratches, springs back up and continues to talk about how he will defeat Garo. Garo then responds by saying he will take care of both heroes and monsters and that they are all done for, but Darkshine charges at Garo with killing intent to crush him, and as Garo tries to use the water stream technique, it does not work, and as Darkshine connects, all the bones in Garo's ribs crack due to the impact and sends him flying through multiple pieces of rubble. And just as Darkshine had thought he had won, Garo sends rocks flying at his face, which does not affect Darkshine but surprises him, as he did did not expect Garo to survive his attack. Garo then comments on the hypocrisy of the heroes and begins to unleash a flurry of attacks at Darkshine, which forces Darkshine to go on the defensive and wait for an opening for when he slows down. However, Darkshine after a while starts to realize that Garo is not letting up and instead is increasing his speed, causing him to, for the first time in his entire life, to consider the possibility of defeat. After this, Darkshine begins to panic and throws a super alloy bazooka at Garo, which Garo responds by throwing a punch back, and as they clash, Darkshine realizes that Garo had not only withstood his attack, but had gotten considerably stronger in a short period of time. And of course, little did Darkshine know that Garo had begun to remove his limiter, which explains this rapid growth in strength. Garo then continues to attack Darkshine with speed, and as Darkshine tries to go in for a punch, Garo easily dodges and hits Darkshine in his abdomen and sends him flying backwards on the floor. Garo then mocks Darkshine about how he claimed he would stop him and menacingly looks at Darkshine as his new form is revealed. Darkshine then goes in to try and attack Garo once again, but he is quickly and easily countered by Garo's newfound speed and power. The narrator then begins to reveal the true nature of Darkshine and say how Darkshine never wanted to throw himself into struggle, but only wanted the thrill of victory, and when faced with a truly tough opponent, Darkshine simply crumbles and cannot overcome it. And in this case, the hurdle he cannot overcome is the hero hunter himself, Garo, as a beautiful double spread of Garo's power personified towering over Darkshine is revealed. In a fit of panic, Darkshine uses another super alloy bazooka, which connects with Garo, but Garo, despite taking damage, pulls through and seems to heal thanks to his new form, and charges straight back at Darkshine, kicking him in the abdomen and sending him flying to the floor, and says he will take Darkshine's arms as he pins him down brutally. Darkshine then lets out an eek in reaction to Garo's overwhelming power, which causes Garo to remember the bullying he and Tario faced as he saw Darkshine's helplessness similarly to those situations, and backs away and says, "It looks like I was bullying him," and says, "That's not the kind of evil I want to carry out." And at this point, it is clear that Garo is not a villain necessarily, and is instead an anti-hero who, I guess you could say, is taking his own approach in carrying out justice, as he sees heroes as morally questionable and hypocritical in their acts. Suddenly, Garo's shoulder begins to swell and cause him to drop in pain as the surrounding area begins to fall apart due to the fight between Tatsumaki and Psycho Orochi. Darkshine is then put into a green bubble created by Tatsumaki as he is floated out of the collapsing monster association, lamenting on how pitiful he was and realizing that he had just lost this fight. After going back into the Monster Association to rescue Tario, Chowder Emperor stumbles across E-Iron and the two other A-class heroes and finds them defeated on the floor, and as Chowder Emperor checks on them, he realizes something coming towards him and manages to dodge in time before he could be hit, and it is revealed that it is none other than the dragon level monster Evil Natural Water. Evil Natural Water then sends more water beams at Chowder Emperor, but he narrowly dodges all of them. The tiger level Dr. Fish then go in and attack Chowder Emperor, but he stops them and slashes them in half. Chowder Emperor then finds himself on the defensive, dodging and defending against all of Evil Natural Water's attacks. Chowder Emperor, using his quick thinking, whips out a new gadget that looks similar to a snowman built out of Legos and uses rapid freezing breath on Evil Natural Water to freeze it in place, which he does successfully. However, someone calls out Chowder Emperor's name, and it's none other than Sludge Jellyfish that Chowder Emperor had defeated earlier on in the Monster Association and has come back to get his revenge. But Evil Ocean Water manages to quickly attach to Sludge Jellyfish and suck the oil contents out of the monster, killing it in the process, and manages to get out of the ice that entrapped it, due to the fact that oil has a lower freezing point than water, of course. Evil Natural Water then sends a water beam towards Chowder Emperor, which goes right through his legs and stops his movements, as the monster towers over in front of the S-Class hero menacingly. Thankfully, before Evil Natural Water could finish off Chowder Emperor, Tatsumaki uses her psychic abilities to save him, which concludes this fight. We suddenly shift our attention to Rover blasting energy beams at Bang, Bomb and Fubuki, which they manage to all evade. Bang then comments on how Rover is one of the strongest monsters in the Monster Association, as they find a place to temporarily hide from Rover. However, Rover doesn't let up and bursts through the concrete wall, ready to unleash another barrage of energy beams. Rover blasts so quick that they cannot dodge, and Bang and Bomb are forced to use their techniques to redirect the attack, and it is revealed that Fubuki had reinforced their bodies to be able to survive the attack, which pushed Fubuki to her limits. But once again, Rover does not waste any time and charges up behind them, ready to unleash another attack. But Bang redirects all of the beams and states how Fubuki's reinforcement had made him feel much lighter, and in combination with his brother, they perform a fist of biting fangs, killing dragons, and cause Rover to finally sit, ending this pretty brief fight. This fight begins with Psycho starting to fuse with Orochi and looks up towards Tatsumaki and says she was holding back, which is true since she had evacuated the other S-Class heroes from the Monster Association. Tatsumaki then proceeds to perform one of the most impressive feats till this day in One Punch Man and lifts the entire Monster Association overground to face Psycho Orochi and expose their true form. And without wasting any time, Psycho Orochi goes in to use an attack that once again is a feat that not only tops Tatsumaki's previous feats of raising the Monster Association overground, but also trumps many other feats that we consider top tier in the series by literally using a beam to slice off part of the Earth's crust clean off and essentially taking out multiple continents in the process. Tatsumaki manages to dodge this, but is surprised by the sudden increase in Psycho's strength. Psycho then begins to explain how she got this power and how she would become the ultimate life form and defeat Tatsumaki, which Tatsumaki responds by mocking her and getting ready to fight. Tatsumaki dodges multiple beams sent her way and proceeds to lift multiple mountain-sized rocks, or just straight up mountains, and throws them at Psychos, using her abilities, causing Psychos to defend against this and slice them in half using her beams. Tatsumaki and Psychos' fight causes a huge tornado to form in the sky that others describe as the end of the world. Psychos then sends a beam at Tatsumaki without seeing her due to her psychic abilities, and just as Psychos had thought she had got Tatsumaki, she realizes that this was a decoy and ends up in Psychos' chest and twists her from the inside out. It is then explained how Tatsumaki got inside of Psychos, but Psychos manages to survive despite taking considerable damage and pins Tatsumaki in place and charges up a blast directly at her. But luckily, our boy Genos manages to fly to where the action is and charge up a blast strong enough to deflect Psychos' beam, not once but 3 times thanks to his new upgrade. However, the third time was Genos' limit and causes him to overheat and discharge. Tatsumaki then quickly gets the remaining heroes to the surface and drops them off to safety so she could stop holding back her full power. Once Tatsumaki saves Genos in her arms, she stops Psychos' beams attacks towards them, which stuns Psychos. Tatsumaki smiles menacingly and unleashes pressure so heavy that the other heroes down on the surface could feel it, and uses an attack with her psychokinesis and completely twists Psychos' Orochi from the roots, destroying the huge form that they took, and tries to finish them off completely. However, Tatsumaki begins to pour out blood from her mouth, signaling that she was close to her limit. But Psychos uses this as an opportunity to escape and morphs into a jet and takes off. After being defeated by Tatsumaki, Psychos' attempt to make a quick escape, she uses the same decoy technique and sends her energy in different directions to confuse Tatsumaki. But Tatsumaki makes sure she does not get away and creates a barrier around the entire City Z, which stops Psychos from escaping. And Psychos then tries to use a surprise beam attack to get rid of Tatsumaki, but Tatsumaki once again uses a decoy which reveals Psychos' position. But then we see another jet fly towards Psychos, and that person, or rather cyborg, is Drive Knight, who has joined the fight after defeating Nian. Drive Knight continues to pursue Psychos and attempts to attack her with some beams, but Psychos manages to dodge as it hits the barrier. Drive Knight then continues his pursuit and barrages Psychos with beams from his jet, and after a while one beam connects, but Psycho sends some back, which forces Drive Knight to transform to Bishop to block it, but one goes past him and heads towards Tatsumaki, who is weakened at the top of the twisted body of the remnants of Psycho's previous form. However, Genos is at the top with her and protects her from the attack. Tatsumaki then musters up enough strength to get back into the fight while simultaneously keeping up this barrier around the city. Drive Knight then continues to chase Psychos through a tunnel, and Tatsumaki helps out by making the top of the tunnel collapse in front of Psychos to stop her, but she transforms the jet to dodge this and morphs back to the jet after evading this attack. However, Genos is on the other side of her and speeding up to catch up and intercept her. Drive Knight then asks Genos to combine with him to stop her while stunning her in place, but Psychos lets off a beam at the back of her jet, which connects with both Drive Knight and Genos, sending them off of the jet. This then gives Psychos enough time to send a beam towards a vulnerable Tatsumaki, but Tank Top Master throws a rock to intercept the beam, which gives Genos and Drive Knight enough time to combine into Dragon King and join the fight once again. Tank Top Master then throws a building into the air containing Atomic Samurai, Puri, Darkshine, and Bang and Bomb, and as Psychos attempts to destroy the building with a beam, Atomic slices it in half and uses a straight slash on her, followed up by Puri's Dark Angel Rush, and then also followed up by Darkshine's Super Alloy Missile. And just as Bang and Bomb are about to perform the finishing move, Psychos makes a quick retreat and leaves the remnants of Orochi to take the brunt of the attack. But this is not over. Tatsumaki then begins to raise the twisted body of Psychos' previous massive form and coats it in psychic energy and points it downwards towards the remnants of Orochi, who is barely even alive, and puts him to rest by thrusting the spear right through the monster, ending this fight. We shift our attention away from Psychos versus the S-Class, and we see that beams are sent towards the other heroes on the surface, and Zombie Man pushes Child Emperor out of the way to take the full brunt of the attack, which completely takes off half of Zombie Man's body, and it is revealed that this was Homeless Emperor who was attacking, and Sweet Mask goes in to attack him, but Black S emerges from the ground and holds Sweet Mask in place, followed up by Fura Ugly breaking out from the ground and surprising Sweet Mask, and using a face caving punch and completely destroys Sweet Mask's face and ripping Sweet Mask in half like a piece of paper. Fura Ugly then approaches Child Emperor and goes in to punch him, but he is stopped by the presence of Homeless Emperor's energy ball that looks much bigger than usual at this point and says get out of the way as he sends the attack straight at Child Emperor and Fura Ugly. We then shift our attention to E-Iron and Atomic Samurai as some water from the ground begins to rise up, and it is none other than evil natural water. Gums then bursts out from the ground near Pig God and Tank Top Master. We once again switch to Black S, where he is commenting about Homeless Emperor's strength and seems somewhat threatened by this. Fura Ugly then appears from underground after narrowly dodging Homeless Emperor's attack and complains about stealing his prey, as then they go off to see who kills the most S-Class heroes. Bang then sees Homeless Emperor send beams towards Tatsumaki in the air from a distance, but it is revealed that it was a decoy and not the real Tatsumaki. We then shift to the real Tatsumaki, where she is really injured and worn out from her previous battle against Psychos Orochi, and speaks to Fubuki about how she's gotten stronger and how she should leave everything up to Tatsumaki and not worry. We then see Gums biting down on Tank Top Master as he struggles to resist the jaws of the dragon level monster, but Pig God saves him by charging into the side of Gums. We then see Fura Ugly pick up one of Narinki's soldiers and literally snap one of his arms. Gums then goes in to bite Tank Top Master, being persistent as always, and bites down on Tank Top Master, but Tank Top Master tries to resist, struggling even more at this point. Fura Ugly then tries to punch down on the soldier he had disabled, but Tatsumaki used her psychic abilities to stop him, which clearly takes a lot out of her since she was weakened from her previous battle. Pig God then saves Tank Top Master again by charging into the side of Gums. Pig God then quickly swallows Narinki's soldier soldiers to save them, and Tank Top Master picks up Pig God and throws him away from the area, which saves the soldiers. Fura Ugly then breaks free from Tatsumaki, which sends her back. Tank Top Master then goes in to use a Tank Top Tackle, but Fura Ugly then uses a forearm caving punch, which clashes with Tank Top Master but completely destroys Tank Top Master's arms, practically disabling him, breaking many bones in his arms and hands. Fura Ugly then uses a full body caving punch, which completely mangles Tank Top Master's body as he is eaten by gums. Fura Ugly then moves on to Tatsumaki, being very pervy as Fura Ugly normally is, but before anything could happen, Genos and Bang arrive and save Tank Top Master, taking him out of Gums' stomach. Genos then follows up by lighting Gums up from the inside out. Fura Ugly then tries to use face caving punch on Bang, but Bang easily counters this and redirects the punch back at Fura Ugly, giving them enough time to check on Tank Top Master. Bang then snaps his tank top back on Tank Top Master's chest, which starts his heart again. However, Fura Ugly furiously gets back up after being hit by his own punch. Gums then goes in to bite Genos as Fura Ugly uses a dignity caving punch on Bang, but Fura Ugly does not learn his lesson, and Bang once again just redirects the punch towards Gums' face, which saves Genos in the process. Bang then proceeds to overwhelm Fura Ugly with attacks, sending him backwards as a furious Gums towers over him and eats him as Bang, Genos, Tatsumaki and Tank Top Master make a quick escape. Gums, however, makes the worst decision of its overall pretty short life as Fura Ugly breaks out of Gums from the inside, killing Gums in the process. But this is not the regular Fura Ugly, but instead an uglier and seemingly stronger vomited Fura Ugly. We then shift our attention to Evil Natural Water against the other S-Class heroes. Evil Natural Water sends water beams towards Atomic Samurai, but Atomic Samurai blocks and slices all of these beams. Iron then gets a thought, which is, what if Evil Natural Water absorbed the ocean? But as Iron is thinking this, he is attacked by Evil Natural Water, but Darkshine stands in front of the beams that Evil Natural Water sent in front of Iron and takes the full force of the attack and is not affected by any of Evil Natural Water's attacks and goes in and easily punches Evil Natural Water away. We then shift our attention to Black S fighting the heroes that defeated Gums and Fura Ugly. Bang then proceeds to attack many Black S, but Atomic comes in and tells Bang to go and tend to the injured and get the injured to safety. The Black S then go in to attack Atomic Samurai, but Atomic slices them into something similar to like pieces of paper and begins to beat the Black S instead of slice them completely, which angers the Black S even more. Tatsumaki, despite being worn out, stops some of the Black S with her ability, and we also see Darkshine take out a few Black S and resist their attacks and show how strong he truly is. Black S then uses a sperm tsunami to overwhelm the heroes. We then see the Council of Swordsmen come in and join the battle on the surface as well. We then see Homeless Emperor in a pretty cool panel sitting on some rocks in front of the moon saying, "All is as the heavens will it to be." But we then see Nichirin slice like an entire part of the ground in half and causes the Black S to fall in, and this is followed up by Spring Mustachio using a Tomboy Barrage. Our attention is once again shifted to Genos dropping Tank Top Master off to Fubuki and Bomb, where Fubuki uses her abilities to transfer some power from Bomb to Tank Top Master to save his life, of course. But as soon as Genos leaves to aid Tatsumaki and the others, there is a huge explosion from opposite Bomb and Fubuki, and they see a huge figure emerging from the ground, and this is none other than Garo, who seems to have transformed once again since the last time we saw him fighting against Darkshine, and Bomb shouts out to Bang to alert him that Garo is here. Atomic then tells Bang to go ahead and will cover for him. Bomb, on the other hand, is face to face with the Garo and has no other choice but to fight Garo and try to defeat him before Bang gets here. Garo lets out a monstrous roar and charges at Bomb, but Bomb dodges and exchanges hits with this form of Garo and says he can no longer hold back. Garo then goes in to take out Fubuki, but Bomb quickly intercepts him, saving Fubuki. Bomb then counters Garo by sending him flying in the air, but our attention is once again shifted to the S-Class heroes against Black S, and we see the sperm tsunami about to hit, but we see Darkshine completely run through a bunch of Black S. We then see a huge combined Black S burst from underground and catch Tatsumaki, but Genos quickly saves her by using an incineration beam, but an even bigger combined Black S appears and slams Genos down to the ground, but Genos manages to spring back up, and thanks to a new feature he added to his upgrade. Tatsumaki then checks on Genos as they both exchange a nice moment, signaling that Tatsumaki recognizes Genos at this point as a comrade, I guess. We then shift our attention to Vomited Fura Ugly, who has finally found himself back to the battlefield and asks where Bang is. The stench of Vomited Fura Ugly is recognized by all people and monsters nearby. Darkshine then tries to attack Vomited Fura Ugly with a super alloy bazooka, which Vomited Fura Ugly responds by using a full-arm melting punch, and as they both connect, their strength is matched. However, due to Vomited Ugly's new acidic properties, Darkshine's skin starts to melt, causing him to panic, as Vomited Ugly spits at Darkshine's chest, which is also acidic, causing Darkshine to panic even more and roll around. Azambai, a member of the Council of Swordsmen, goes in to attack Vomited Fura Ugly, but his sword is caught and Vomited Fura Ugly spits at his face, killing him in the process. Atomic Samurai and Nichiren then go in to use an atomic slash and an EI Ashura slash, but Vomited Fura Ugly is not affected and only results in their swords melting. We then go back to the fight between Bomb and Garo, which has been at a stalemate for quite a while as they both exchange blows. Bomb then stamps into the ground preparing to perform a great attack, but Garo counters this and hits Bomb in the face, sending him to the floor. However, before Garo could do any more, Bang had finally arrived and faces Garo in this new monstrous form. We then go back to Vomited Fura Ugly against Atomic and Nichiren, and we see Vomited Ugly go in to use a full body melting punch. Amahari and Nichiren both save Atomic Samurai and the Iron from being hit from the attack, and both sacrifice themselves. The body of Amahari had been completely melted, and Nichiren was left with only his upper body after his complete lower body had been melted by the acid. Nichiren then takes out the Sun Blade out from his prayer beads and gives the blade to Atomic Samurai, explaining the strength of the blade and its counterpart, the Moon Blade. Vomited Fura Ugly then starts to eat Amahari's melted body as a way to replenish. Black S then tells Vomited Fura Ugly to better not start eating him as well. Vomited Fura Ugly then proceeds to pour acid all over a few of the Black S's and eat them, which infuriates Black S. As Black S looks around at the battlefield, he sees that this is a perfect opportunity to merge and teach Vomited Fura Ugly a lesson. And we see a bright light appear from the merging, and Vomited Fura Ugly tries to spray this light with acid, but a huge golden figure just goes in and, not being affected by the acid, hits Vomited Fura Ugly, sending him to the floor, as it is revealed that Golden S had been born and had joined the battle. Homeless Emperor then just begins to send energy balls at Vomited Fura Ugly to just rub salt in the wound, and continues to use a straight line bombardment at Vomited Ugly, which does considerable damage. Vomited Fura Ugly then tries to escape, but Golden S intends to kill him right there and then, while Homeless Emperor stops him and persuades him to let him go as he could be useful in the future. Golden S then shifts his attention away to Darkshine, and Darkshine, as he just looks at Golden S towering over him, can't believe that someone's muscles could be shinier or bulkier than his. Golden S then proceeds to punch Darkshine, sending him flying backwards, defeating him in the process. We then see Metal Bat arrive to the surface, where he catches a couple of Black S's attention. The Black S attack Metal Bat, but Metal Bat counters by destroying them in one swing. Homeless Emperor, back at the main center of action, uses an extreme carpet bombing on all of the swordsmen, but they manage to keep up with the beams and slice them as they rain down on them. Genos then makes a status report about his current situation with the numerous Black S. Genos then takes out a few of the Black S, but does not do much as millions of them are still alive and are surrounding them and Tatsumaki. And as they stomp down on Genos and Tatsumaki, we hear the sound of the one and only King Engine ready to fight and take out all of the Black S. We shift our attention once again to Homeless Emperor, who is still performing the carpet bomb on the swordsman, and whilst he is doing this, he is also charging up an even bigger energy ball to finish off the fight in one attack. Atomic, whilst being covered by the iron, gets ready to use the sun blade, and once he is ready, he unsheathes the blade, and as he's in the zone, he jumps up and slices right through the huge energy ball created by Homeless Emperor. And in a cool panel, we see Atomic Samurai's eyes are whited out, signaling that this could be an entirely different form or mode that he is in. This is also supported by the fact that his hand has actually merged with the Sunblade completely. Atomic in this Sunblade mode goes in to slice Homeless Emperor, but luckily Golden S saves Homeless Emperor by jumping in the way, and the impact of Atomic's swing causes the ground to break, and as Golden S tries to break the Sunblade, it changes form and goes wiggly and like a whip and slices right through Golden S's hand. After this, Atomic's Sunblade mode wears off as he is too tired and sheaves the blade. Golden S realizes that Atomic's mode is finally weared off and approaches Atomic and the other swordsman as Homeless Emperor charges another energy ball in the back. However, before they could do anything, they hear the legendary King engine and face his way as King looks down on them from the top of a small cliff. And of course, King being King has an elaborate plan in his head and is not panicking at all and is simply waiting for Saitama to join him to finish off these monsters. King then hears his name being called behind him and assumes it's Saitama, but it is actually Child Emperor and Puri coming from underground. Homeless Emperor then wastes no time and gets ready to send an attack towards King, but King stops him and tells him to look under his feet, which fills Homeless Emperor with pure fear as he quickly looks, and King, of course being a mastermind, tells him that the rubble beneath his feet is unstable. Knowing that Homeless Emperor would overthink this situation, King comfortably stands atop of the cliff looking down on the cadres as he toys around with their psyche. Homeless Emperor, of course, overthinks this message and thinks of it as a warning sign, which is all according to King's ultimate plan, of course. King then, in an attempt to intimidate Homeless Emperor, says, "Just a regular human," which once again fills Homeless Emperor with fear, as King had figured out that he was just a regular human with the ability to control these energy balls. Suddenly, Zombie Man bursts from directly underneath Homeless Emperor and pins him to the floor, which was also part of King's ultimate plan, as he had sensed Zombie Man from underground and just waited for the right time for Zombie Man to finally come above onto the surface. Homeless Emperor then demands help from Black S, but Black S did not want to risk being open to attacks from King. Black S even realizes that Evil Natural Water, who is a lot bigger at this point, also is not moving towards King, and deduces that King perceives them as just ants and not worthy opponents, which of course is entirely correct, and this infuriates Black S. And whilst this is happening, King in his head is going through how he will defeat the cadres in one attack with his SSK mode and his ultimate Hellfire Burst Wave Motion Cannon. Golden S, then seeing the immense power of King, decides that the only way he could even have a chance of winning is by merging with the remaining Black S, and as he does this, a blinding light is formed in the center of the battlefield and Platinum S is born. We then shift our attention to Zombie Man and Homeless Emperor, and Zombie Man asks who is pulling the strings, and Homeless Emperor says, "You want to know about God?" And as he says this, through Homeless Emperor's eyes, we see none other than God stand atop of the moon and look down on everything and says, "Silence, I am taking them back." And in this beautiful colored double spread, we see God appear in front of a naked Homeless Emperor in a vast land full of flowers and grass. And God says, "Your power, your life, they are both forfeit." And in the next panel, we see Homeless Emperor burn to a crisp on the floor, smoking from the inside out, which of course surprises Zombie Man as he had not done anything. We then switch back to King vs Platinum S, where Atomic Samurai even recognizes the immense aura of Platinum S, but King is not fazed by this and gets ready to perform his ultimate attack. But right before this, Platinum S blitzes the other S-Class hero and says he will send King's head flying. And as he says this, King prepares to use his ultimate attack, and in in this instance, we see Garo appear on the battlefield, going at insane speeds, knocking Platinum Sperm into the air, blocking and slicing through Evil Natural Water's beams, and blitzing it as well, causing a huge sort of explosion to form from the impact of these attacks. King then pretends to use his ultimate attack, but knows that Garo appearing was also all according to his plan, as he smiles and bears witness the result of his cunning tactics. After defeating Bomb, Garo stares down at Bang and gets ready to fight, as well as Bang. This pre-awakened form of Garo roars at Bang as they both charge at each other. Garo goes in for a punch, but Bang redirects this and they proceed to exchange blows for a while, but Bang finds an opening and kicks Garo backwards into the air. After he does this, Bang quickly goes to where Garo will land and then kicks Garo backwards and follows up by hitting him into the air, and then jumps up to slam him back down, but Garo blocks and manages to wrap his legs around Bang in the air and slam him down to the ground. Bang recovers and they exchange a punch as they both hit each other in the face. Garo then gets into the heart exploding release stance, which surprises Bang since it was a technique that he used to use and stopped using due to its side effects and consequences. We then get a flashback of Bang when he was younger and the leader of the Fist of Exploding Heart Liberation, and as we get this flashback, it is revealed that Bang and Bomb fought in the past after having conflicting ideas, and after being defeated, Bang opened a dojo and then met Garo. We then go back to the fight and we see them exchange punches once again, and it is clear that Bang is reaching his limits, and after fighting Garo some more, Bang says he has failed as a teacher by neglecting his students due to him being too busy being a hero. Bang then reveals that after this he will quit being a hero and that him and Garo can once again become master and pupil, and as Bang says this, part of Garo's shell on his eye begins to crack and they then both perform their respective techniques and clash. Garo then tries to swing back a kick at Bang, but Bang dodges and Bang tries to correct Garo's stance and stop him from using the exploding heart released fist, but Garo tries to attack Bang, but Bang uses a kick to slam Garo into some rubble. Garo then tries to finish this fight by using the whirlwind water stream roaring aura sky ripping fist, but Bang barely manages to match this and they both go in to punch each other and they both connect their punches, but Garo grazes Bang's chest, defeating Bang in the process. As Bang lay on the floor defeated, at the worst possible time, Vomited Fury Ugly appears in front of Bang and towers over his injured body, and as Vomited Fury Ugly is about to kill Bang, parts of Garo's shell over his eye shatters, revealing his human eye, and in the process awakens him from his unconscious state. Vomited Fury Ugly then uses a full body melting punch on Bang, but before it could connect, Garo, with the most speed and power we've seen him use so far in the series, goes right through Vomited Fury Ugly's chest, killing him in the process. After arriving at the battlefield of Saitama and Monaco, Flashy Flash wastes no time and goes in to attack Garo, who had also just arrived to the fight after beating Vomited Fury Ugly. Garo then introduces himself, and as he does this, Platinum Sperm does his famous flash step and says, "Allow me to pass through for a sec," and hits Garo and Flashy Flash so quick they couldn't even react. Platinum Sperm then proceeds to show disappointment in Garo and says that they should have disposed of him from the start. Garo of course does not back down and says, "Come get some," as all three of them get ready to fight. The three of these absolute monsters are fighting at such speed they are simply illustrated as different colored speed lines, as they bounce around the battlefield so quick no other heroes could see them, and their fight could be mistaken for some constellations. Platinum S and Flashy Flash clash, but Garo appears above them and slams down on them using a kick that breaks the ground beneath them. Flashy Flash then exchanges some blows with Garo but is sent back into Platinum S, as Platinum S wraps his antenna around Flashy Flash's neck, but Flashy counters with a wind blade kick. Platinum S then suggests that Garo and him should team up and get rid of Flashy Flash, but Garo responds by whacking Platinum S in the face with a punch which infuriates Platinum S. Garo then begins to feel like he's starting to master his martial arts completely and performs a monster calamity Godslayer fist on Flashy and Platinum S, but they recover and Platinum S increases the pressure of Flashy, whilst Flashy thinks about how he has met 4 people who have surpassed his speed, which infuriates him as he performs a Flashy fist, but Platinum S uses Platinum Rings to counter this and kicks Flashy Flash away. But Flashy Flash tries his hardest to recover and uses a flowing shadow feat towards Garo, but he is countered and is bombarded with attacks, and Platinum S deals the finishing blow, sending Flashy Flash downwards and into the ground, which takes him out of the fight. And now it's just Garo and Platinum S. As Garo and Platinum S fight, they go at even crazier speeds, and Garo then goes in for an attack that Platinum S tries to counter but is not quick enough to counter it, and allows Garo to punch him and drag him crashing down to the ground, and the impact of this attack causes a huge explosion. But Platinum S is not done yet and roars and calls Garo's name out, but Garo does an Uno reverse card and says let me pass through for a sec, and goes straight through Platinum S and smashes him to pieces. After defeating Platinum S, Garo does not get a break, and Sage Centipede emerges from the ground accompanied by his sister, Evil Ocean Water, who is now huge and has absorbed the ocean. Garo then wastes no time and unleashes a barrage of attacks on Sage Centipede, which makes Sage Centipede acknowledge Garo's strength. We then see Tario in the escape helicopter, and Garo sees this and says that brat, he manages to escape, which makes Sage Centipede use the helicopter as bait and threatens to shoot it down if Garo moves. Sage Centipede then uses this to his advantage and uses a great Centipede March followed up by a great Ocean Cannon by Evil Ocean Water, and as these attacks connect to Garo, we see a figure running along the water directly at Evil Ocean Water, and it is none other than the Baldy himself, Saitama. Saitama then proceeds to use a serious punch and punches right through Evil Ocean Water, defeating the monster in the process and taking it out of the fight as well. Sage Centipede sees this and tries to go for the helicopter, but Metal Bat joins the fight and uses a dragon thrashing on Sage Centipede, but this does not do much damage at all. Metal Bat then realizes Garo is on the battlefield and complains at Garo for trying to get in his way, but Garo explains the situation and they both going to use a savage tornado and a roaring aura sky ripping fist, causing considerable damage to Sage Centipede. But Sage Centipede still pursues the helicopter and grabs a hold of it and turns back at Metal Bat and Garo and uses a Centipede Grand March on both of them. The heroes on the helicopter try to help, and the two heroes mount a gun and shoot bullets into the eyes of Sage Centipede, which allows Garo to break free of Sage Centipede's grasp and follows up by slamming Sage Centipede in the face. Metal Bat then comes in with a spiral of overwhelming victory and slices off the tendrils that grab the hold of the helicopter, which allows Garo to throw the helicopter to a nearby net and get it to safety. Sage Centipede then uses a 6,666 legged Grand March, but Metal Bat and Garo counter by using a Savage Hurricane and a Crossfang Dragon Slayer Fist, which once again causes considerable damage to Sage Centipede. Garo then attacks Sage Centipede once again and goes right through Sage Centipede and takes out its regenerative core and throws it up into the air and forces Sage Centipede to chase after it. Garo throws it so far into the air that it reaches out to space. Garo manages to get to the core first and destroys it by using Sage Centipede as a platform. Garo then flashes back to when he trained with Bang at the dojo and compares it to the situation he is currently, and pretends Sage Centipede are like the tiles he crushed when he was at the dojo, and slices right through Sage Centipede from the top and says he is the pinnacle of martial arts as he slices down the monster's huge body all the way down to earth, where in a cool double spread he poses in front of the cut corpse of God's disciple Sage Centipede. Now, this is the end of every fight in the Monster Association arc, and I know Saitama versus Garo is still left to do, but I will make a whole separate video for that. I will do like a whole narration of Garo versus Saitama, because technically we're, at the time of this recording, Garo vs Saitama is not yet finished, and I don't predict it will be finished for maybe another month or two. So I'm not gonna wait another month or two to release this video. But of course, this video did almost take me 2 months, and I honestly can't believe I managed to make this, since this isn't the type of video I normally do. But if you guys want to see me do this for other arcs in One Punch Man or other series, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'm gonna go and get some rest because I am so tired.